Scripture readings comes to us. The first one comes from 2 Samuel chapter 22, verse 7. Give me a moment because I get to my Bible. Listen for the word of the Lord. In my distress, I called upon the Lord to my God. I called from his temple. He heard my voice, and my cry came to his ears. Sisters and brothers, this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. And our New Testament passage comes to us from the book of Romans, chapter 15, verse 13. Listen again for God's word. May the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace in believing, so that you may abound in hope by the power of the Holy Spirit. Sisters and brothers, this too is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Well, friends, we continue our Covenant Love sermon series where we take 5 weeks and we interview people just like you to see what God is up to in your life. Now, I confess, I try to meet with these folks the week before so that we can rehearse and talk about the important things of their story. And when I met with Ms. Mercier earlier this week, my heart leapt because it was such a terrific time for us to talk about God at work, not just in her life, but I think what she has to say as a millennial, those born between 1980 and 2000, actually applies to most of us sitting in the room today. So with no further delay, let us welcome Ms. Laura Mercier to the stage. Whichever you would like. Pastors know not to answer this question. So, Laura, you are a familiar face to many of us, serving as Covenant's Director of Communication and Youth Experience. But it's not like you're new to Covenant. In fact, you've been around this building for how many years?
22.
22 years. So, as we begin, let us just hear a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. There's some pictures. Yeah, that's me. I was born in Boise. I grew up just exactly half a mile away from here, and spent most of my Sundays at Covenant. This is my wonderful, loving brother that's funnier than me in every way. And my parents are sitting right back over here, Richard and Brenda.
Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad.
And I grew up with what I imagine to be the most ideal family situation. No complaints here. But I have some pictures of myself in the church. There's old Pastor Phil, and in the background, if you'll notice, Kathy Tice.
That's Kathy Tice.
Yeah, so this is me in 4th grade receiving the Adventure Bible that 4th graders still receive, correct?
Yes.
Yes. So there's a very special
What
day.
year is this, do you think?
This would have been, let's see, if I was in kindergarten in 2000.
2004, 2005? That's a good Whitworth education right there.
Hopefully the major wasn't math. This was me at Camp Sawtooth, a place that I went on to counsel at a couple years later. But I'm right there. The side bangs were not a good look for me. This was 7th grade, I want to say. There's some other members from our church in here. And so that was some other memories of me in the Presbyterian church. Here's our Duck Valley mission. Yeah, this was an awesome one. We got to rebuild sections of a church on the reservation that were falling in, part of the roof.
And this is a group from Covenant, right?
Yes, this is a Covenant group. We've got Shanna's daughter right here. And then this is my first day at Whitworth. For those of you that don't know, Whitworth is a Presbyterian university. It was one of the best experiences of my life. Yeah, so Presbyterian through and through. This is another picture of my family.
That's a great photo of Rich.
I know, bearing the weight. What an amazing father. And for those of you that don't know, Will is 6'5", and so he's not light. So for my dad to carry not only me and my mom, but also have Will on top of everyone.
It's a good image of what it feels like to be a father. Carrying the weight of your family.
But I don't know that I want to leave his face up there the whole time.
Well, that's a good one.
Yeah, I can leave it on that one. Yeah, so.
So you grew up in the church here.
Mhm.
You go off to Whitworth. You have an incredible experience. You come back, and last spring we are advertising for this position that we think who is going to be the right person. And Laura Mercier says, I'm going to be the director of communication and youth experience. So this has been a lot of fun to work with you over the past 6 months or so. And as we were planning this series, we're trying to get a diversity of voices, right? So last week we had friends from the Scouts, and that was a terrific week. And we're like, oh, we need to get someone from the millennial generation because there are so many millennials out there, right? So we're like, oh, let's invite Laura, the millennial in the crowd. But what you have to say speaks to your generation, I think.
I should hope so.
But I think it also speaks to a lot of us who have these things in our pockets. And my guess is that 90% of you have something like this in your pocket. You've just grown up with this your whole life, right? So not that you should speak for an entire generation, but your experience. Tell us what it is like to be a millennial as you've grown up in the church, but also grown up with these things in your pocket, surrounded by technology, also in a generation that more and more is not in the pews. Tell us what it's like to be a millennial these days, Laura.
Yeah, okay, I'll try. I'm a millennial, surprise! So, meaning I grew up with the rise of technology and the rise of social media, and I never really had to wait for my computer to turn on and warm up like many of you did. I never had to wait for the TV to warm up before I could watch it. And while that was super nice that I didn't have to wait for any of it, I think it sort of created some issues in terms of relationship depth with people nowadays, people my age nowadays. So, sorry, I'm reading my notes.
Well, I do want to tease that out later because many of us are here for a relationship, right? We all are yearning for a relationship, but I think you just pointed something out that many of us feel that a lot of our relationships can feel pretty shallow.
Yeah, so for me, as well as I'm sure many of the people my age, it became hard to desire a relationship with God. And I'm putting part of that on the rise of social media today. And with the prevalence of social media now, it created a greener grass scenario, I think. It created a greener grass scenario where...
What do you mean by that?
Sorry. Where we're constantly looking at everyone else's lives, because that's what social media is about. It's about projecting what you're doing in your own life or what you want to be doing in your own life. And so now we're constantly seeing what everyone else is doing and how much better they've got it. And so it creates dissatisfaction a lot of times, just because it looks like our life is not nearly as exciting or desirable as any other person around us. But I will get more to that in a second. But yeah, so with social media, it's all about being seen nowadays. And I think that's part of the issue with showing up to church. Yeah. And I gave Kevin an example that I'm going to give you guys, and it was, I'm struggling to start the example. If I'm given the option of showing up at church on a Sunday morning and being told what I'm potentially doing wrong by a book that's outdated, and then just feeling crappy for the rest of the day because I've been doing things that are not righteous, another air quote. Or I have the option to go to brunch with 5 of my closest friends and dress really nice and take pictures with people that I adore, and not feel bad about myself. 9 out of 10 times, I'm going to choose the option to not feel bad about myself and to be seen on social media by posting these pictures and to market myself and have that desirable life rather than choose the hard option and listen to someone tell me what they think I might be doing wrong. But that might not be the best decision for my health or for my spiritual well-being, but it provides that immediate satisfaction that we had been growing up with due to that rise in technology, and we've always been given this instant gratification, instant answers, instant everything. And so then when it comes time to think about what I'm doing wrong, and it comes time to turn introspectively and reevaluate myself, that's not the instant gratification that we get from social media, and that's not the instant gratification that we get from technology, and because Google can't give you self-evaluation, unfortunately.
So it sounds like you're describing something that's just been accentuated over the last 10 years with social media. Mm-hmm. This desire that I have to look good, that I have to be cool. I'm definitely not experiencing that in church because it's not a great selfie zone, right? We don't encourage for folks to take selfies here in church. But I don't think that this notion of living up to something more than myself, comparing ourselves to others, is new. It's just accentuated by technology. And as we think about millennials especially, I'm thinking most of them are at the coffee shop this morning because they're not here. But you mentioned a few things that's hard for some people, not just millennials, but many of us, to come to church. It's easier to be gratified elsewhere. You get that instant mimosa, that instant selfie with friends at the coffee shop. But you mentioned that sometimes we hear things that we don't necessarily like about ourselves at church. Can you say more about that? Because I'm intrigued by that. Because I'd like for people to feel relatively good about themselves, right?
Yeah. I mean, while church is a place to cultivate an awesome relationship with God and with others, it's also a place to keep yourself in check, which is awesome in some ways, but in other ways it creates a bit of resentment maybe, because feeling bad about yourself isn't what you want to do. But then when you come here and you hear about this all these morals and all these values that should be upheld by everyone in society, and you inside your head know that you haven't been upholding them, I think that's where the resentment stems from. And is that an answer?
Well, I don't want to blame the church, because we can get into all these, what I think are unhealthy patterns of blaming, right? But I think that you just described religion, how many millennials think of what we do here in worship. You come, you listen, you're told what to do, you leave, then you behave appropriately, right? That's what religion is about, right? But Christianity has never been about that. The story of Jesus Christ is that you're a sinner. Like that can be hard for people to hear, right? But that's the liberating aspect of Jesus, is that you're a sinner. You're never going to stack up. You're never going to be good enough on your own. But in Jesus, if we confess our dependence upon Him who can do much greater than we could ever do on ourselves, we find some liberation in our lives. And we dig deeper beyond the I need to look cool, I need to do the right thing. But with Jesus, we just get to be ourselves. And that's good news that I'm hopeful that we can begin to articulate to millennials, is that you never have to be good enough to be here on Sunday. In fact, if you just say, there is good news in me not being good enough, I might be able to find truth and life. So you've spent 22 years at this church, Laura. Tell us about some really good times in your relationship with God over the past 22 years, not just here at Covenant, but overall in your life.
Yeah. So, as a child, this place was pretty busy. This place was popping. And I remember walking down the hallway. I remember when that hallway was painted, but I remember walking down it on Sundays and then walking into the far back room where there were many little pews set up along the sides, and Kathy Tice would be dancing along to every move I make it you, and trying to get the kids to do all the moves. And it really gave the impression that, Christianity is a party, God is a party, which it should be, and it is most of the time. And so I think that was part of what shaped my ideas of what Christianity should be, and Camp Sawtooth also accentuated that in just everything that they did, because it was like what Kathy Tice did out in the forest.
I'd like to see pictures of Kathy Tice out in the forest.
That would be a sight. And so then also coming back to church through college and stuff like that, it was a lot of that introspection that some of us don't like to face. And so going from that huge party down the hall to now facing the things about myself that I don't like, it was a real shift. Yeah. But
Speaking of things about ourselves that we don't like, I don't think this is unique to you, Laura, but I think everyone sitting here has some things about ourselves that we don't like. How do we get through that? Can you tell us about some of the challenges in your own life and how God was with you through that?
First off, let me say that I have not had many hardships in my life. I have been blessed with an amazing set of people surrounding me that help lift me up and all of that. Mom and Dad. Also this church. But let's see. Issues. I guess I'm gonna follow this path of millennial actions here. So every millennial is basically a master marketer of themselves, as we've already spoken about a little bit earlier with the whole brunch thing and everyone being seen due to the rise of technology and the rise of social media, and everybody just wants to be more seen, and that's probably why we take a lot of the actions that we take in terms of not showing up to church and choosing the options that aren't best for ourselves. And it's all in an attempt to be more seen. And obviously I'm not excluding myself from this. I'm saying that I am right there in the middle of it. And
it's okay, a lot of them are too.
And I love to be seen, and I love to show off myself as this person that has it together, and I love to show that I do fun things, and oh, I went here on this break and I did this and I've got this going on and this opportunity coming up. It's going to be super cool. And unfortunately, my faith and the depth of my faith has taken a serious blow because of that. It's not where it could be had I simply not tried to market myself in a lot of scenarios. And yeah, so I think I really struggled, especially through college, with the whole being seen thing, and that created these barriers around myself, these walls, because I was so afraid to show other people, like, hey, I'm not okay, hey, this is going on in my mind, and it's not all right. And I was constantly trying to show people what I thought they would want to see on social media, and that's just who I thought I should be in real life too. As many of us probably do, we have this version that we're like, this is the person that people will see on Sundays. And that's how I think it becomes for a lot of people my age, is that we have this version of ourselves in our mind that we're like, this is what I market to other people, and that's and that creates the whole superficiality of religion, and that creates superficiality in relationships, and yeah, so letting down the walls of what I should be is probably the hardest thing that's happening. And it sucks that a lot of us now are still scared to even do that in front of God. Like, if you're gonna let down your marketing walls in front of someone, it should be God. But even still, that's not what we want to do, because we're so used to showing this side of ourselves that then showing up at church and saying, I'm broken and it's okay to be broken, becomes the scariest thing in the world, and hence resentment toward the church, maybe.
Yeah. What does the superficiality feel like when we live our lives so focused on the right projection? What does that superficiality feel like?
That's a good question, Kevin. What does superficiality feel like? I don't know. I think in many ways it can just be going through the motions, but in other ways, I think it can. Dang it, Kevin.
Well, my guess is that it just doesn't feel very good.
Yeah, I mean.
But so many of us, like even as non-millennials, are like, yeah, I hear what she's saying, and it's terrible. It's isolating. It's lonely. But I could be wrong. That's how I feel sometimes.
Do you mean superficiality between people, or between ourselves and God?
Yes.
Or ourselves and God?
Yes.
Okay.
And the other two.
And also both. Yeah, I think that can be part of our discontent with most things lately, because I mean, this has been a lot of like back and forth conversation and scattered, but I do think that all of these things that I talked about with millennials do cause the superficiality between ourselves and God, because of all of these issues that I stated prior. And I am forgetting the question, Kevin.
How does it feel?
How does it feel?
To live superficial life.
I guess it makes religion feel obsolete. Because if we're not getting anything deeper from it, then why even go at all? And if we're still just trying to market ourselves at church, then we're just prolonging that superficiality, and we're just prolonging this version of ourselves that we think we should be, that's not providing us any actual long-term happiness or
This is good. And I could spend an hour, which I won't, just talking about this notion of projecting this false image of ourselves and living like that. It just doesn't feel good. In fact, Jesus says something about that, right? Where we wash our outside, but our insides are still dirty. My guess is not just millennials, but all of us are anxious and yearning for something real that's not polished, that doesn't have a fancy logo, but even for something real and true. And my guess is that millennials especially are turned off when churches don't speak to that inner portion that is real and true, the area where Jesus lives.
Yeah.
Tell us how you've experienced God's covenant love.
Well, I have experienced a lot of grace in this church and the people in this church in the past months. These two right here are pretty great people. But amidst my own issues and my own discontent with myself, these two have tried to help me out of my my persistent millennial issue of discontent, and have really encouraged me to just stop trying to show myself as this awesome person and say, hey, this is what's going on. And that's what church is trying to be all about most of the time. It's the whole come as you are thing, and I think that's what we forget a lot of times. But yeah, so I have experienced covenant love through the people that helped me to break down the walls of me trying to show the perfect side of myself. And yeah, they remind me to say that I'm broken if I'm broken, and say that, hey, this stuff is messed up in my life, and help me through it. And that's what I picture as non-superficial love and covenant love, and yeah, steadfast. So thanks, everyone in this church.
So church matters a little bit. You get one last thought to share with this great group of people. To depart Laura's wisdom, what is it?
I have something written, and I will try to read that. But I also might expand on it a little bit. I have a couple points, actually. Number one, marketing yourself is useless to God. So he already sees you for who you are, so don't lie to him. You know, don't try to show this perfect side of yourself, because he already sees the crappy side of yourself. Number two goes back to the good times that I experienced in this church as a kid, and it was the whole party down the hall idea, where everything with God can be a party, and yeah, it doesn't have to be this whole, I don't know, tussling with yourself, and it can just be dancing and singing and loving God because you want to, and sometimes that is the depth that we need, and it's not superficial at all if you're dancing and you're singing and you're loving because you mean it. Yeah, so I guess remembering to embrace those simple aspects of God, because that's where we find the depth that we're all searching for. And that's something that I'm trying to tell myself still too, so. Yeah.
Well, Laura, thank you very much for speaking on behalf of an entire generation. Let's give her a round of applause. Well, friends, we come to the time of our